need you to hear this, especially if you're a parent, grandparent, or guardian, or somebody who cares about kids. We need to talk about human trafficking because January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. A lot of kids who are being trafficked right now, they're not missing. They're not chained up. They're not locked in vans. They're sleeping in their own beds and eating breakfast with their families, going to school every day. And then some of them are sneaking out of their bedroom windows at night and coming back before morning, like nothing ever happened. If that sentence made your stomach drop, good. So stay with me. I'm so glad that we set a time aside to talk about this, that we seek to educate ourselves, that we share posts and statistics, and we share information. But there's a dark truth here. Trafficking, it doesn't care what month it is. Predators don't slow down in February because the calendar page suddenly turned and the ribbons came down. So if this conversation only happens for maybe a few days in January, we aren't really doing what's necessary to protect our kids. Yes, we're acknowledging that a problem exists for a short period of time, and then we're hoping that that covers safety for the rest of the year. I was 13 years old when I was kidnapped, and I want to say this clearly, because this is where a lot of parents subconsciously decide whether they think that this applies to them or not. I was the first child abducted by an internet predator, and for over 20 years, I've dedicated my life to protecting children and families from the evolving dangers online. From speaking in schools and communities to working with law enforcement and helping shape safety legislation, my mission, it's never changed, to make the digital world and the real world safer. And that's taken me into schools, auditoriums, conferences, and communities across the country, speaking directly with students, parents, teachers, educators, law enforcement, really anybody who will listen to me about how this happens and how to stop it. Every story is different. Every victim's story is different. But for me, I wasn't a runaway, nor was I neglected. I was just a kid in a, you might say, pretty normal home with parents who loved me. Any kid can fall victim to dangers. Children from troubled homes filled with struggles or seemingly idyllic youth. Crime, it does not discriminate. What it does is it targets opportunity. And there was opportunity. I was online, I was curious, I was figuring out who I was, and a predator knew exactly how to use that. My story, it didn't start with violence or force. It was just a conversation online, attention from somebody who listened to me and made me feel like I mattered. Someone who made me feel important and understood me. Because human trafficking of minors doesn't always, and in fact rarely, starts with fear. It usually starts with false trust. After all, human trafficking involves force, fraud, or coercion. For kids, curiosity is normal and it's healthy. So is wanting connection and being seen and accepted. Predators, they're not exploiting bad kids or bad parenting. They're exploiting developmentally normal behavior. They slide into a child's life slowly, patiently. They know what they're doing. They don't rush. They build something first. And by the time that fear shows up, the psychological trap is already set. There's often already chains, not physical ones, but mental ones. Here's something that really stops parents in their tracks when I say it, because it doesn't match with what a lot of people believe human trafficking looks like and what they've seen in movies or have read in books or have seen on television shows. A huge number of trafficked kids aren't missing. They're at home. They're at the breakfast table. They're at the dinner table. They're turning their homework in. They're in the marching band. They're in the school play. They're functioning just enough that it avoids detection. Through my work, I've spoken to children who are made to sneak out of their window at night and come back before anyone even wakes up. And then there's those, of course, who never leave their bedroom, so to speak, at all. That kind of trafficking is happening through screens. And this manipulation, it runs so deep that many children feel like they have no other choice. And to some, it does. It feels like love or belonging. They don't know that they're being exploited. Or maybe they feel too ashamed to speak up. Trafficking means that someone is exploiting a child and benefiting from their fear, their body, their images, or their compliance. And once a child is trapped in this fear and in this shame and in this spiral, it does most of the work for the trafficker. Traffickers are often not stupid. They set their trap, they wait, and they dig their claws in so deep. And they keep an eye out for the perfect target, like kids who are lonely, anxious, bored, curious, struggling with their identity, who crave attention, or who are just trying to figure out where they fit in, which, by the way, describes most kids on any given day. And then these traffickers, they gain access. They mirror interests, they validate feelings, they pretend to give love, they give gifts, a sense of adventure, feelings of worth and value. At first, they sometimes love bomb. They become the person that a child feels safest talking to. That's right, not you. The trafficker is who they feel safest with. And the reason for this is that very deliberately, They start pulling that child away from safe adults. And they say things like, your parents would never understand. You know, you'd get in trouble if you told. Hey, this is just between us. It's our secret. They work at this isolation intentionally. And soon for the child, it feels like obligation. And then guilt creeps in. And then fear and shame slams that door shut. Kids are so often told it's their fault, that they consented or they wanted it, and no one will believe them. They tell kids that they'll be arrested for participating, or they'll threaten their families. Or maybe they'll threaten to share images or messages if they tell. And that shame, it is so powerful, and it keeps victims quiet. After all, that is the entire point. So yes, understand, please, that this can happen to your family. But how do you know it's happening? What are the signs? What do you look out for? Well, there isn't one obvious sign. There is no flashing warning light or waving red flag. So you have to be aware of changing patterns in your kids. You have to know your kids. You have to realize when things don't quite add up. Like maybe your child suddenly becomes secretive about their phone or the devices and their activities. Sure, they might be exploring their independence, or it could be something much worse. Maybe they're exhausted all the time, or having intense mood swings, which sounds like a normal teenager. So it can be really hard to spot. Maybe they become anxious, they're going through depression, they experience panic attacks, or engage in self-harm. You might notice they have money you didn't give them, or gifts that they aren't able to explain. They could have a new group of friends you've never met or even heard of. Maybe you notice them becoming fearful or hypervigilant. And the thing is, it's really easy to explain these things away. Again, they're just a teenager. And that is the more likely scenario, because most teenagers go through some form of this at some point in time. And you might tell yourself, it's just a phase, or dreaded hormones, or they're going through stress. And that could be true, but it could also be something worse. Trafficking thrives in that hesitation, in that pause where you second guess and push this out of your mind. Yes, it's so scary. It is so scary that this could happen to your family, but it's somebody's family. It's somebody's kids. Those kids you see on the news, let me tell you, they're just like your kid. They could be your kid. I know, because I was a kid on the news. Yes, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, but awareness alone doesn't protect kids. Education and being aware, which is different from awareness, and paying attention does. The most powerful prevention tool you have as a parent isn't an app or a filter. It's your close relationship. That relationship where your child knows that they can tell you absolutely anything without fear of punishment or shame or losing your love and respect. And it's why you have to talk to your children about this openly, even if it's uncomfortable. Technology isn't the enemy here, but silence is. It's not about spying on your children. It is so important that you educate yourself on the dangers and how to prevent this, like by watching these videos. And I also created an easy resource for parents, and I wrote the Internet Safety Guidebook, Protecting Kids in Digital Age. It's filled with tools, conversation starters, and guidance to help parents navigate today's online world. You can find it on Amazon or in the link below. I share my story because I survived, and I am so lucky, because sadly, many kids don't. There are so many who are still trapped right now, hiding in plain sight. This isn't something that just happens in other countries far away from the security of your home. It can happen in your home. It's happening in somebody's home right now. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm so glad we're talking about this, and it's Human Trafficking Awareness Month. But protecting kids can't end when the month does. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. Please like, follow, and subscribe for more videos about how to keep your family safe in the digital world. I'm Alicia Kozak. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.